Welcome back to another edition of Political Breakfast. We're always glad that you tune in and listen. So glad that you're here on WABE. I'm Lisa Rayam here with Tharon Johnson and Brian Robinson standing by. And before I rolled record, we were talking about just the anxiety that America seems to be feeling right now. And we just need some lighter moments, don't we, just to make it through the day? Because it's just been so much, don't you think? Just back to back to back.
Yeah.
Well, the one place you can turn and see some good stuff happening is our local government. If you live in Brookhaven, where B-Rob lives, Sandy Springs, where I live,
great places.
Atlanta, and they have their challenges, right? But those leaders have come together to decide to do what's best for their cities and for their country. But then, Lisa, unfortunately, when you turn on television, podcasts, go to your social media. I mean, everything that's come out of Washington right now is bad. And I know, and I know we're going to talk about this, but I have to go on. Brian's going to have his moment here in a second, but let me take mine real quick. I called it at not our last Political Breakfast Live. And just, again, shout out to all the people who came out and saw us at the Center.
Thank you so much. It was
great.
Oh, yeah. That
you guys
was
were
fun.
wonderful.
That was really fun, yeah.
Good audience. But the one before that, I said that this bromance between Elon Musk and Donald Trump was not going to last. It was going to erupt, and it was going to end badly.
It's getting nasty, isn't
and
it?
Lily needs to go back and, I asked her to cut the tape where I said that.
I think she did, yeah.
So I call it the big, beautiful bromance breakup. Two grown men who are battling on social media, insulting one another. But I would say this publicly. I agree with Elon Musk on this big, beautiful bill, that it's not a good bill, and it's going to benefit billionaires. And B-Rob is know where I'm going with this. It's going to add a tremendous amount of money, trillions of dollars to our national debt. And it's so much stuff in there that no matter how you try to spend it, now the Republicans got a messaging problem. How do you message this, not just to the American public, but how do you message this to the senators that you need to vote for this? And so this bromance is over. I think it's only going to get worse. And look, Trump has said that he feels like it's united the party. I disagree. When you have the world's richest man who is already showing you that he can play in elections, if you're a Republican on the ballot this year, next year, or the years to follow, you're going to be worried about how much Elon is going to spend in your race.
Wow.
That's a great setup for me, Tharon. Thank you. I will say, yes, Tharon did call it. I fully acknowledge that. I think Theron's prouder of himself over that he should be, because I do think that the breakup was pretty obvious, right? These two egos were never going to be in the same room together for a terribly long period of time. It was a relationship of convenience for both of them. Trump got access to Elon's money. Elon got access to a government platform, one territory that he hasn't conquered like he has in industry. I don't think Elon is going to engage next year, not because he's not crazy, not because he's not motivated to, but because his businesses have suffered from his involvement in politics. Sales of Tesla in Europe have ended, essentially. That's a very important market for them. Now, he's probably lost a lot of market share amongst liberals in America as well. Could lose his government contracts because he's pissed off the chief executive officer of the country, and that's billions and billions of dollars. So I know he's the wealthiest man in the world, but those numbers can collapse fairly quickly if your stock prices go down. So he's got some practical things to think through. He's got a board of directors to answer to for a lot of these decisions. And those stockholders, those boards are beginning to say, okay, that was fun. We all enjoyed it, but you need to get to work and we need to recover our stock prices. That's why I think he'll stay out of it.
Well, real quick, Lisa, you remember, and B-Rob, you're right, but I am going to take a little bit more credit than you want to give me. It was not so much, I agree with you. It was two egos. It was two rich men, one richer than the other, that were battling. But remember, and shout out to our live audience at that time, they were worried that it was going to go on for so long. Remember, when we did the live conversation, it was right when Doge was underway. And I think, shout out to Van Jones on CNN. He raised some really good national security issues, because let's not forget, not only did Elon come in, he brought in all of these workers who had all this clearance, right? All this access to federal information. I won't say it was all declassified, but a lot of it was information. So to let a man just go, and he's gone. What I was trying to do with the live event is say, hey, don't worry, guys. Like, it's not going to last that long. And I think I even predicted, I'll call myself, I said, maybe it'll go at the most a year, but I definitely said that within the first 90 days, we'll figure out how long it's going to last. So it was more so to ease the calm for people in the room that were like, oh, my God, the world is coming to an end because Elon is coming in with all this aggression and laying off people and changing the federal government.
And okay, if you want me to praise you, okay, I'll do this. I'll do this. I think where you get the credit is getting close. What do y'all call you're a golfer. I'm not. Closest to the hole. You were pretty close to the hole, right? When it came to timeline. There's always an award for close to the hole. I saw that this weekend there at the event I was at.
It's actually closest to the pin, but yes, that's
okay. Close to the pin. There you go. See, I don't get all the lingo. I don't get all the lingo. But I will say thank you, Elon Musk, for calling attention to the deficit spending and to the debt. Obviously, you just heard Tharon talk. He's even brought some Democrats along to be concerned about the debt. They weren't concerned so much when we were doing the Inflation Reduction Act and Build Back Better, but now everybody's for it. Everybody's for deficit reduction now. And look, and that is where I agree with Elon Musk. Y'all heard me go off about this at the live show last week. This is the existential threat to our country. No leader in our country is serious about it. And we have an unserious direction in this country headed toward an iceberg, and it's going to be disastrous. But you know what's going to happen? Let me tell you what's going to happen. This is how it's going to play out. Anybody who tries to be responsible and goes to where the real spending is to reform it, to bend the cost curve, to get us on the right course, will be politically murdered by the American people, strung up on a wire like Mussolini after World War II. That's what's going to happen to anybody in D.C. who is responsible and brings real solutions. Americans don't want solutions. They want to pay low taxes with a lot of government services. That's true of Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. It unites us as Americans. We are united in our irresponsibility.
Let's talk about home a little bit. GOP convention took place over the weekend, and Josh McCoon won re-election, but Brad Raffensperger's name was tossed around in a really odd way, wasn't it?
Well, Brad was the victim of a resolution that they had calling on the Republican Party to not allow him to run for an office as a Republican in the future. I think it's very clear that is not within the state law to allow. If you meet the qualifications and you pay your dues, you get to qualify however you wish. And there's not some self-appointed, non-elected group of people who can determine who runs for office in the state of Georgia. That is not okay, and it shouldn't be allowed. But if I'm Brad Raffensperger, here's what I do. I call up Josh McCoon, and by the way, congratulations to our friend Josh McCoon. We all have a great relationship with him. He's always gracious enough to come on our show and talk about what's on his mind and do it in a very polite, civil way. Raffensperger should call Josh up, and Josh has said the right thing. Josh is like, I'm going to qualify whoever qualifies under the rules, right? So Josh is not out there saying, yeah, we're going to uphold this resolution. But Raffensperger should call and be like, Josh, we all know this vote was fraudulent. Find me the votes to overturn this resolution. We all know it's fake. We all know this is fraud. I'm not asking you to go find all the fraud. I'm just asking you to go find enough to overturn this resolution. And we know that the people in the audience who voted for this resolution are perfectly fine with that. They think that's just hunky-dory to demand the overturn of an election. So Raffensperger should do what those delegates want and ask to overturn what was obviously a fraudulent election. It doesn't matter if Brad has any proof. It doesn't matter. As long as he says that it was fraudulent, it is.
We, the Democrats, got through a convention, and, it was all this conversation about who should run and, how the votes, and went to a runoff. But I would say that compared to what just happened with the Republican convention, I think that the Democrats came out way more united and together than the Republicans, because it's what we said on this podcast a few weeks ago. You have a MAGA right constituency that are fired up, and that if you're a Republican on a statewide ballot next year, this is a very strong voting block of people that are going to judge you on how committed you are to the MAGA agenda that is being led by Donald Trump. And so a lot of these folks are pushing back on Secretary of State Raffensperger because they believe that he should have broke the law, and he got complimented for doing his job by a lot of people. And he was just smart enough to record a call from a president at the time who was asking him to do something that was illegal. So now, I would say this. I actually listened to Patricia Pridemore's speech. She's on the PSC, and it was good to see a white woman out there that actually made sense. And actually, she definitely doubled down on her commitment to President Trump.
Sure.
And she also defended the votes at the PSC. But everyone else after that, correct me if I'm wrong, B. Rob, was pretty right. Was pretty conservative, and I think that Secretary of State Raffensperger, this resolution makes him think about whether or not he really wants to run for office. But there is a unique opportunity for him as well, because how does he play to the independent, more moderate Republican group of voters at a time where clearly the most right wing of the establishment of the MAGA agenda clearly doesn't even want him to be on the ballot. They don't even want him to run. They don't even want him to even be a Republican anymore. They want to just totally get rid of him, and definitely don't want him to be able to run. So it'll be interesting to see how it all turns out.
Absolutely. And let me say one real quick point about divisiveness and division within parties. I did note over the weekend that the Democrat National Committee chairman tearfully has, looked at resigning from the position because of an extreme activist within the DNC trying to primary incumbents for not fighting Trump enough, or not being extreme enough, and that's how I see it anyway, for not being hard left enough on a lot of issues. And so they kind of face some of those same divisiveness on the Democrat side too, on the national level, maybe not on the state level. I'm not an expert on what they do on the state level over there. But I'll say with the Republican convention, for people running for office, you go there, you talk. And thanks for the shout out there, and to my friend Tricia. She is a dear close friend. She was one of the original Deal supporters back in 2010, so we've always been really tight.
I was scared. I follow her on Instagram. I was scared to do the fire signal or like it or heart it or anything, because I didn't want my everybody. But no,
major controversy there.
Yeah, so I slid in her DM. And I think I gave her a little thumbs, kind of like an okay symbol. I can't lose my Democratic chop. But no, it was a good remarks.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to joke with her about Tharon sliding into her DMs. That's fantastic. But a lot of elected officials won't even go to the convention anymore. I was with a lot of them this weekend at a place that wasn't Dalton. I can tell you that. Yeah. And
Governor Kemp still won't step foot.
Right. Well, there's nothing. He's built a parallel organization. Yeah. I mean, no one has been more tangible in his opposition to empowering them than him. He's got his own group that sort of runs parallel to the party. Right. And so, but if you're an elected official, it makes sense to go. Those are voters. They are influencers in their community to some degree, and some of them. I'm only speaking of some of them. But you go there and you give a very conservative message, and you focus on the areas where you are very conservative and you have overlap with that group, which is very normal. Mm-hmm. But that group is to the right and distinct from the broader primary electorate. Let's not forget, I go back to this a lot, that this convention before the 22 election, so in 2021, they would have elected all of the Trump-endorsed candidates against Kemp, Raffensperger, Carr, etc. Like Raffensperger in that convention got 4% of the vote in the straw poll and went on to win by 53% in the primary. That is a gulf between where the party activists are and the regular primary voters are. And again, I'll point out, the party primary voters aren't moderates. Like, our primary electorate is still very conservative, but yet still distinct from those who show up at these party events.
One point I want to make real quick, and this is, one of the things that our listeners like with Brian and I is, I think Jennifer, who runs WABE, she said that we're the we're the we're the strategists on the podcast, right? WAB. We give our sort of strategist
bromance again.
We give our strategist opinion, right? We kind of give our partisan opinion. So I would tell you this is that the Republican Party, they have a challenge. And Democrats have a similar challenge too. When Brian Kemp was reelected in 2022, let us not forget that was when Donald Trump was out of office. So a lot of these Republicans were emboldened to come back out in large numbers because Donald Trump had told them to stay home in 2020. And so now in 2024, where now Trump is back in office and now has a huge sort of influence on the MAGA right, I think you're going to see more and more Republicans running for office being held to a stronger MAGA standard because remember, Brian Kemp had David Perdue, who ran against him in 2022, had Trump's support, but Trump was not in the White House anymore. So now that Trump is back in the White House, and if you're running for office, and particularly, Chris Carr has got to figure this out, right? How does he get support? What we perceive would be a lot of support that would go towards Burt Jones, partly because he is expected, not guaranteed, to get the endorsement for Donald Trump. And so I just think, Lisa, is that if there's going to be a battle on the Republican side all the way up and down the ballot.
Yes.
And whoever comes out of those primaries are going to be so far right, which presents a unique opportunity for Democrats to elect a moderate, pragmatic Democrat, he or she, that can actually be in the middle and have enough gravitas to hold on to the left. But there are going to be a lot of disaffected Republicans and independents in play in November of next year. And we got to make sure that we call it out for what it is. And I think that what you saw at the convention is going to be more of what you're going to see that's going to play out in these elections.
I actually agree with everything Tharon just said. That was really good analysis. Good job. And my one pushback there is I don't know that Democrats will listen to Tharon's good advice. And here's why. Because what are we seeing amongst Democrats right now? And the elites, the establishment can't control it because this is a democracy. The Democratic base hates Donald Trump with the fire of 1,000 suns. And they are angry. And anger is a motivating force in politics, second only to maybe fear. And they're probably combined. And so the angry elements are going to show up in force in 2026 in that primary for the Democrats. And Tharon's saying that there's going to be a race to the right amongst the Republicans. I think there's going to be a race toward fury on the left. Like you have to out-hate Donald Trump. And we've seen that play out before. We saw it definitely in 2020. As the presidential primary is playing out, and the Democrats went way too far left, so much so that Kamala Harris spent all of 2024 trying to distance herself from the things that she said during that election cycle. And I think what happened there was social media, like Twitter, at that time was so left-wing and had become such an echo chamber for the self-righteous and the doctrinaire on the left that Democrats began to think that the Twittersphere was representative of the electorate, and it wasn't. And we're seeing that kind of, play out now as the left has abandoned Twitter to go to Blue Sky, where that's becoming the doctrinaire left-wing echo chamber. That's a very dangerous place for Democrats to be because they don't hear from real people, the real people who are like, hey, why are you letting all these illegals in? Why are you letting these riot zones exist in Minneapolis and Seattle? Liberals weren't hearing that at the top. So they face some of those same dynamics going into 2026. And to Tharon's point about Chris and Burt, I think there's a lot of truth to what he's saying. The straw poll there showed Burt Jones beating Chris Carr by a very wide margin. But Chris Carr's campaign can say, yeah, they said the same thing in 2022, and I got 75% of the vote in the real vote, the primary. So it's not necessarily representative. And Tharon is right. The conventional wisdom is that Burt Jones will get the president's endorsement. But what I am hearing from inside sources over and over again is that the communication between the White House and Burt hasn't been fantastic, those around Trump. And then we see Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, with all due respect to Burt Jones, who is close to President Trump, Brian Jack's very close to President Trump. These are Georgians who have great relationships. Tyler Harper certainly is in that group. Who was closer to Donald Trump, other than Brian Jack, than Marjorie Taylor Greene? And she said this weekend that she's looking at a race for governor because she doesn't like either of the candidates. So what is she going to do? Because is the President Trump going to go in there and say anything bad about this woman who has been by his side, who is his opening act at a lot of these rallies, who gets cheers that are as loud as his at those same rallies? She's very uniquely situated, and I will say that I will point out the irony, though. She's attacking Chris Carr for not signing on to this Attorney General letter with other Republican AGs, opposing the ban on state regulation of artificial intelligence for 10 years. And Chris Carr's campaign responded, she voted for it. She voted for the bill that she's attacking him over, right? So I just want a little bit of intellectual consistency there.
Last thing I'll say is this. B-Rob, remind me what action was taken against former Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan at this convention? Did they do something similar to him that they try to do with Raffensperger?
I don't know, Tharon, if he was in these resolutions. I know the executive committee has voted to excommunicate, expel him from the party. You remember Lisa asked Josh McCoon about this on our show a few weeks ago, and Josh
got real animated.
Josh was like, Jeff self-deported.
Enjoyed every minute of it.
Yes,
Enjoyed it.
I love that line. He goes, the president talks about self-deported. Jeff Duncan self-deported for the party, which I thought was hilarious.
I'm hearing some rumors in the street. I won't report it, on this podcast, but I'm hearing some rumors about Jeff Duncan and what he may be aspiring to do.
Really?
And I'm also hearing. Yeah, and I'm hearing some rumors, too, that I know we're going to get to Derek Dooley here next, but I think that there's a couple more people that may be thinking about jumping into some of these GOP statewide races as well.
Yeah, man, the floodgates are beginning to open. We're seeing on the Democrat side where, every day there's a new Democrat announcing for governor. We got State Representative Derek Jackson getting in the race. Last week, somebody who ran, I believe, for lieutenant governor last time and didn't win the primary. I may be getting that wrong, but has been around before.
No, you're right.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. All right. Well, one thing I want to say, and I need to track this down a little bit, B-Rob, but you made me think of something that I've been hearing. The name Jeff Duncan has been kind of swirling out there amongst some circles about maybe looking at something to do. I don't know what it is. I gotta press it a little harder, but I just want to say it on this podcast that this was a guy who, as you just reminded me when we were getting ready to come on air, was suggested to be expelled from the GOP. And I know when Chairman Josh McCoon was on, he said that, what did he say, Jeff Duncan self-deported himself.
It was hilarious.
Smile.
It was hilarious.
Yeah, he did it with a smile.
But one of the names that were announced last week, and folks who we talked to, the Georgia gang, Brian had been telling us for weeks that there was a person who was coming, and we wouldn't share who it was, and it was Derek Dooley. Mm-hmm. And so he announced that he is exploring the opportunity to look at U.S. Senate. I don't know him personally, but growing up as a
coach could
Bulldog,
be a great leader.
Yeah, I think y'all are. I think y'all are alums of the same high school, right?
And that's what I was getting at. So he's a Clark Central graduate. The Dooley family, is well respected. Of course, the legendary coach Vince Dooley and his wife. And so it's interesting that he was met with some mixed praise, right, B-Rob? I mean, I saw are his colors really orange and white, or did someone make that up on social media?
That's a parody, man. But he hasn't. But the parody is about the fact that he hasn't lived in Georgia for most of his adult life. He's been around coaching the country, and it sort of pokes fun at his losing record when he was head coach of Tennessee. One of the O's in Dooley, and the colors are the Tennessee Volunteers colors that they have on this parody.
Bright orange.
Yes,
right.
and they have the O has the state still of Tennessee in it. The 3 stars that we've all seen on the on the state of Tennessee flag. It was hilarious. But what shocked me was everybody sending it to me Saturday morning in a frenzy. It went all over Republican land in Georgia on Saturday. Mm-hmm. Was everybody thought it was real? Like whoever did this put Cody Hall's name at the top of it as the media contact. Governor Deal's political comms guy, which was a brilliant touch. I sent it to a buddy. I sent it to the buddy. I sent this to a buddy in the White House, and he wrote back and he goes, what I think is the best touch of this is them wrapping Cody Hall into it. Like he's behind this terrible idea.
So Cody's not working with him.
I don't know, but he didn't write that release. I can promise you that.
Well, we both know Cody. It's good for Cody to get a little poked at because he does a lot of poking himself every time Democrats do something. I just think it's interesting. Derek Dooley, from what I remember, at least to your point, my brother, I have an older brother who Brian recently met, who's 10 years older than me.
I did.
Knows the Dooley family pretty well. And again, growing up in Athens, we've known the Dooleys for a while. And so it's very interesting that he is a pro-business Republican who apparently has been making some waves. Because again, Brian, you had heard, but I've been hearing about this Republican. But I'm also hearing that there may be another Republican out there, another pro-business Republican, a gentleman who may actually be thinking about running for governor or a U.S. Senate, but I'm thinking it's more so governor too. So this race is not over. A lot of people are going to continue to explore and announce on the Republican side.
What are you hearing on the Democratic side? Anything?
Well, let me say before he gets to the Derek Jackson, I want to fill in some blanks of what Tharon's saying there because he's right. Somebody last week was polling under a fake name. I believe it was Daniel Carter or something, or Daniel Cooper. That's not a real name of a candidate looking to run for governor. But they were like testing the negatives of some corporate executive. That's what we call it when if you knew that he had said bad things about Trump, would you still vote for him in the Republican Party? That's testing the negatives in a poll. This was not a real person's name. And there's a lot of mystery in insider circles about who it is doing it. There are I've heard a lot of suggestions. Some of them are people I know. And so Tharon's right. There's more to come. And if you got that poll, please let us know because I'm really curious to know how far and wide it went. I'm sorry, Tharon, go ahead about Derek Jackson there.
Yeah, so last week, Lisa, you've been asking me when we could chop this up, so I'll just kind of act like you asked me. You want to ask me, Lisa, and then we'll kind of I'll do Derek.
What's popping on the Democratic side?
Well, State Representative Derek Jackson announced last week that he's running for governor and has since gone out with an ad talking about his career and his experience. This is a Navy veteran, served in the military for 22 years, ran for office as a state representative back in 2016, vacated that seat to run unsuccessfully for lieutenant governor in a primary, and he lost to Charlie Bailey, who now went on to, of course, lose to Burt Jones, but now the Democratic Party chair. So Derek has some interesting characteristics. He's also a guy who ran recently unsuccessfully for leader against Carolyn Hughley. But he's very outspoken. In his announcement, he had some choice words for Democrats. He talked about this listening tour that's happening, and the fact that Stacey Abrams has been invited to, I think, maybe 2 or 3 stops along the way. And his words, not mine. He said that she should continue her book tour. So there's no love lost there between those two. But Derek is a man of Phi Alpha fraternity incorporated. So good frat brother of mine, Lisa. But he's really kind of been out there with the progressive wing of the party. Anytime there's protests, things that are happening, he's been out there, and he represents a high voting area of Georgia. Fayette County. He invited me to the NAACP speech. I was a keynote speaker there a while back. And so I think that Derek has got to get his name recognition up a little bit more, even though he's been on a statewide ballot recently. I think he's got to get his name recognition up. And, of course, can he raise the money? And will he be able to get enough support amongst his colleagues within the state house and the state senate? But he's off to the running. He's sending text messages to all of us talking about his campaign, and he's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's really hard. And this is my question as we do a little text thread, the 3 of us, before we come on to tape on Monday mornings. And, one question I was raising to Tharon on that text thread was, how do you break through as a state representative in a crowded primary? And this is not a Democrat issue. This is true on either side. But if you're a state rep running for the nomination in a crowded field with people with much higher name ID, what is your pathway to raising the 2 to 3 really, you want $5 to $6 million to break through, build your name ID, and drive a message that is winning, that tells voters, hey, I'm a better option than Keisha Lance Bottoms or Michael Thurman or whoever else may get into that race. It's really hard to do when you're in the minority in the state house to raise it. It's really hard to do if you're in the majority in the state house and you're running for statewide office. I think it's going to be very difficult on both sides with crowded fields for people running in primaries to raise a lot of money, because the governor's race is going to consume so much of the money, and the big names are going to consume the most money there. John Ossoff is going to be a vacuum, hoovering up money from the Democrat donors in the state as an incumbent, something that's not a benefit of those running for governor. Democrats know he's going to be their nominee. They don't know who's going to be their Democratic nominee. John Ossoff is really their best bet for their investment in campaigns. So it's going to be really hard for them to do. And look, Republicans are going to face some of those same issues. We definitely see John King in the wake of Brian Kemp telling his donors to keep their powder dry. You got to think John King's fundraising calls are not going well right now. And I want to finish up going back real quickly, if I can, to Derek Dooley. I am open to seeing what he can do. For people who haven't been in politics, and Tharon knows this because he's had to deal with these guys coming in from the outside to run for statewide office too. They all think that politics is easy. They all think, well, I've been watching Fox News or I've been watching MSNBC and reading the news my whole life. These people are idiots, and I know how to do this. All of them think that. And it's a hard transition for people who've been in businesses or other fields to come into politics cold, because they don't know how to talk to a primary audience. They don't know the difference between that and a general election audience. And a lot of these rich people think that the opinions of their country club friends are representative of the broader electorate. And it's not, right? And so if he can show me that he'll listen to his advisors and have a message that works, and he's good on the stump, and he's good in the what I call the tailgate scenario, or the cocktail hour scenario, where you can work the crowd and make friends and people are impressed with you in your 5-minute speech. Yeah, I mean, I'm open to seeing that.
Let me interpret that for our listeners. That was Brian's audition to let Derek Dooley and his campaign know, hey man, I'm open for business. Y'all need to hire me.
I can help you.
And I can help you. Like, let me just, I can give you the 7-second version of what just happened. That's Brian's way of saying, hey man, come holler at me. I'll take your call and I'll send you a proposal within 24 hours for you to hire me. But no, listen, how will Kemp play in this race? I mean, you got to assume us the Athens boys, right? Us Athenians, we stick together. And then Brian, leave the country club people alone. You got to tell.
That's true. Hey, it's a great place to get stock tips and business leads. Less of a great place to get ideas on how to talk to a primary electorate in either party. I can tell you that much. But yeah,